Chosen one, stop whatever you are doing and listen, because what I am about to reveal is not just information, it is an urgent psychological alert. Somewhere in the hidden chambers of global power, a man who controlled billions of dollars, who owned skyscrapers, who bent presidents and CEOs to his will, saw your photo, and in that moment his empire of illusions collapsed. This was no ordinary man. He was celebrated, feared, and admired in every corner of the world. Yet when his eyes locked onto your image, something inside of him broke in a way that no amount of money, no ritual, no manipulation could repair. He realized the truth that no fortune can erase, no power can replace. There exists a force greater than money, more rare than diamonds, stronger than armies. That force is your authenticity. He discovered it too late, and it drove him to madness. Tonight you will see why your mere existence unsettles the most powerful, why your light exposes their shadows, and why your presence alone is enough to dismantle the lies they built their lives upon. Stay with me, because once you hear what happened after he saw your face, you will never look at your own reflection the same way again. And before we continue, if this message already touches something deep within your spirit, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't yet, and comment 99 below, because 99 is the number of divine completion. The reminder that nothing and no one can touch the wholeness of your soul. He lived in a world built entirely on illusions. Gold dripped from the walls of his penthouse, the kind of place where a single chandelier cost more than most families earn in a lifetime. His garage was a museum of machines that looked like they belonged in another galaxy. Private jets waiting at runways, yachts gleaming under Mediterranean suns, women fighting for a single glance from him as if his attention were oxygen. To the outside world, he was the portrait of success, the embodiment of everything people are taught to chase. Reporters called him a visionary. Politicians bowed to his influence. Entire corporations moved at the snap of his fingers. If you had asked the world, they would have sworn this man had conquered life itself. But here lies the devastating truth. None of it was real. Behind the designer suits, behind the crafted smiles that lit up magazine covers, there was nothing but a hollow shell. He was a man rehearsing a role, acting 24 hours a day, every day of his life. When he laughed, it wasn't laughter, it was calculation. When he showed sympathy, it wasn't compassion, it was manipulation. He did not feel joy. He did not feel peace. He did not even know what it was to wake up in the morning and breathe without wearing a mask. Imagine carrying billions in the bank yet being spiritually bankrupt, so empty that silence feels like a threat, so void that stillness feels like death. And then, out of nowhere, your image appeared before him. A simple photograph, something that to anyone else would look ordinary, but to him, it was the crack that shattered his carefully constructed empire of delusion. Because in your eyes, he saw something he had never encountered. Not in boardrooms, not in the bedrooms of models, not in the rituals of power, not even in the depths of his own soul. It was authenticity, a presence that could not be staged, a peace that could not be purchased, a light that refused to be imitated. For the first time in decades, he felt something real. It was not admiration, it was not desire. It was something darker, sharper, more violent. It was envy that pierced through his chest like a blade. Because in a single second, your existence revealed to him the greatest scandal of his life. With all his billions, all his influence, all his noise and dominance, he was still infinitely smaller than you. You who never had to wear a mask. You who never needed validation. You who simply were, and the realization cut deeper than any financial loss, deeper than any betrayal he had ever endured. He understood, in that devastating moment, that everything he had built was nothing but a performance, and your single smile, captured in a frozen image, was more real than the sum of his entire empire. That was the wound that would never close. That was the moment the actor dropped the mask and finally saw his own emptiness staring back. But envy is not passive. It grows, it devours. It transforms perception into obsession. That night, as he sat alone in his skyscraper surrounded by silence too heavy for him to bear, he kept staring at your photo as if it contained the secret of life itself. And with every glance, the hunger in him deepened, mutating into something even more dangerous. He didn't just envy you, he needed to possess what you had. He needed to either steal it or destroy it. And that decision, born from the hollowness of a soul that never learned to be real, would mark the beginning of a descent so terrifying that once you hear it, you will understand why your very existence is the most dangerous threat to their entire world. Once envy was born inside him, it refused to stay quiet. What began as a sudden shock turned into a hunger that consumed him day and night. He could not escape it, not during his billion-dollar meetings, not while lying in his penthouse bed overlooking the skyline, not even while traveling on private jets with glasses of the finest wine in his hands. Your photo haunted him like a mirror of everything he lacked. And when a man who controls nations feels powerless in front of something so simple, he doesn't surrender. He schemes. That is when obsession took root. At first, he tried imitation. He studied your posture, your smile, the way your eyes carried peace without effort. He thought, if I copy the surface, I will find the secret hidden inside. So he began buying entire libraries of self-help books. He summoned the most expensive life coaches on earth. He surrounded himself with meditation teachers flown in from the Himalayas, yogis who promised to bend his energy into alignment, psychologists who charged fortunes to teach him authenticity as if it were a formula. But every attempt failed, because authenticity is not a skill you learn. It is not a mask you wear more convincingly. It is a truth that rises from within, and for him within was only a wasteland. When imitation collapsed, desperation set in. That is when he crossed into the shadows of obsession. He began believing that authenticity was a kind of energy that could be stolen, like an object transferred from one vessel to another. With $50 million in his hands, he hired shamans who promised soul transference, magicians who spoke of rituals of possession, mystics who claimed they could extract the essence of one person and implant it into another. His penthouse transformed into something grotesque, a playground of occult symbols and expensive artifacts, black candles dripping over marble floors, crystals imported from every continent, circles of salt drawn where he sat chanting your name under his breath as if invoking your spirit would make it his. Imagine a billionaire, once worshipped by the world, now reduced to begging invisible forces to give him what you were born with naturally. He traveled to Peru to drink ayahuasca with tribes who did not trust his intentions. He paid monks in Tibet to guide him into altered states of consciousness, but their silence only tormented him more. He met sorcerers in dark corners of Europe who promised to transfer your light through photos, and he spent nights on the floor clutching your image, whispering prayers he didn't understand. The irony was unbearable. A man who ruled with power now kneeling like a desperate child, pleading with shadows to grant him the authenticity that even the poorest child in the street could carry more easily than him. But every ritual ended the same way. Nothing. No transfer. No awakening, no peace. Only the same hollow echo inside, the same emptiness that mocked him louder each day. The more he tried, the more the universe slammed the door in his face. And with every failure, the obsession grew sharper, more poisonous, until his mind was a battlefield of rage and despair. He could not understand why billions of dollars could not purchase what you had in abundance. He could not accept that there existed something beyond his reach. And so, as his hands trembled over blackened candles, as his lips muttered chants he did not believe, as his eyes stared into the photo of a stranger who unknowingly destroyed his sanity, the truth carved itself deeper into his soul. Authenticity cannot be bought, stolen, or manufactured. It must be lived, it must be real, it must be born within. But for him, within was a void. That truth was more than he could bear. It cracked his mind, twisted his soul, and pushed him further into madness. Because when a man who once believed he controlled the world discovers that there is one treasure he can never obtain, his obsession doesn't die, it mutates. It evolves into something far darker. And that darkness was about to drive him into decisions so reckless, so catastrophic, that the entire empire he built would tremble on the edge of destruction. The universe has a language that cannot be bribed, a justice that cannot be delayed. When a man intoxicated by pride dares to tamper with forces beyond his comprehension, consequences arrive not as whispers, but as storms. For this billionaire psychopath, the downfall began quietly. like cracks forming in a glass tower so tall that no one believed it could ever fall. At first it was subtle, a contract suddenly delayed, a deal that should have been effortless slipping away without explanation. But those small fractures spread like wildfire, and soon the foundation of his empire began to tremble beneath him. Overnight, investments that had seemed indestructible started to disintegrate. Stocks collapsed without warning, governments withdrew their support, and entire companies turned against him. Within weeks, billions evaporated, vanishing like smoke from a fire that could not be contained. This was not coincidence.
It was the inevitable recoil of the universe, a force correcting itself, punishing the arrogance of a man who tried to manipulate what was never his to control. The betrayals came next.
Business partners who once swore eternal loyalty vanished like shadows at sunrise. Men he had groomed for decades, protégés he believed would die at his command, suddenly turned their backs on him. Some left silently, disappearing from his meetings and refusing to answer his calls. Others left publicly, exposing his corruption, tearing holes in his carefully crafted image. The same hands that once built his empire now dismantled it piece by piece, and he could do nothing but watch. And the women, the glamorous faces that had clung to him for wealth and status, were suddenly repelled by something they could not name. They no longer saw him as untouchable. His aura of dominance had evaporated, replaced by an energy that unsettled, even disgusted them. They avoided his gaze, fled his presence, blocked his number. He who had once been worshipped like a god was now treated like a ghost. But the most devastating blow came from within his inner circle. His henchmen, the loyal enforcers who had carried out his dirtiest orders without hesitation, began to hesitate. They had been paid to investigate you, to spread lies, to sabotage your peace. Yet when they encountered your presence, your quiet authenticity, your unshakable truth, something shifted inside them. They felt what he could not feel. They recognized what he could not recognize. They saw that your existence was not a performance, not an act, not a mask. And that subtle recognition planted a seed of resistance in their hearts. One by one, they refused to obey his commands. Imagine the terror of a man who once controlled everyone around him suddenly realizing he could not even control those closest to him. He raged, he screamed, he threw money at them, doubled their salaries, threatened their families, but it was useless. Because your authenticity had touched them in a way his billions never could. And once authenticity awakens something inside, no force on earth can put it back to sleep. Picture him now, a man who once believed he owned the world, standing alone in a penthouse that felt like a prison, watching everything he built crumble in real time. Contracts dissolving, billions evaporating, lovers fleeing, soldiers betraying. And the most unbearable part? The person who triggered this collapse, you, was not even aware of it. You were not watching him. You were not plotting against him. You didn't even know his name. And yet your mere existence, your simple authenticity, was dismantling his empire brick by brick. For the first time in his life, he was forced to confront a truth so devastating that it shattered what little sanity he had left. All his power was an illusion. All his control was smoke. All his billions were fragile dust in the face of something as simple as a genuine soul. And that realization pushed him into the next stage of his obsession, a stage so destructive, so irreversible, that the collapse of his empire would only be the beginning of his nightmare. Here is the unshakable truth. Your authenticity is not just a gift, it is a mirror that strips away illusions. When the powerful, those who built entire empires of lies, masks, and manipulation, look at you, they are forced to confront the terrifying emptiness of their own existence. They spend fortunes designing identities, hiring image consultants, scripting every word, every gesture, every smile. They create layers upon layers of performance, hoping no one notices the hollow abyss behind their eyes. But the moment you walk into a room, their fortress of illusions collapses in silence, because your simplicity exposes their fraud without you even trying. Your authenticity speaks louder than their speeches. Your natural peace radiates stronger than their armies. Your quiet confidence dismantles the illusion of their power, and that is why they fear you. It is not because you are louder, richer, or more influential. It is because you are real in a world addicted to the counterfeit. Think about it. These people host extravagant parties where every glass of champagne costs more than a month's salary for the average worker. They pose for cameras, dripping in diamonds, surrounded by applause. Yet the moment someone like you enters, someone whose smile is not staged, whose kindness is not calculated, whose peace cannot be shaken, the air changes. Guests begin to notice the difference. They sense something more valuable than gold, something that cannot be explained. Their eyes shift away from the glittering spectacle and toward you. And that terrifies the powerful, because it reveals a truth they spend their entire lives running from. Authenticity outshines performance every single time. That is why they try to copy you. They will imitate your words, your habits, your lifestyle, hoping to capture even a fraction of your light. But no matter how hard they try, their imitation always cracks, because authenticity cannot be rehearsed. It is either alive in you or it is absent. When copying fails, they turn to mockery. They laugh at your simplicity, call you naive, label you foolish for not playing their games. But their mockery is only camouflage for fear, because deep down they know your simplicity is stronger than all their strategies. And when copying and mocking no longer shield them from the truth, they turn to destruction.
They spread lies about you, invent scandals, pay others to tarnish your image, not because you are weak, but because you are strong enough to reveal their weakness.
Your very existence is an unspoken accusation. Your presence whispers to them, you are not real. And they cannot bear that whisper, because it pierces deeper than any weapon. What they don't understand is this: your simplicity is not weakness. It is the sharpest sword hidden in plain sight. A genuine smile disarms more than a gun. A peaceful heart is more unshakable than a fortress. And a soul that does not crave validation is the most dangerous soul of all, because it cannot be bought, manipulated, or broken. This is why empires tremble when authentic people rise. This is why billionaires collapse in despair after seeing a single photo of you, because your simplicity exposes their entire kingdom as a fragile illusion. You are living proof that everything they spent their lives chasing was meaningless, and everything they ignored was priceless. And here lies the irony that devours them from within. While they spend fortunes trying to construct an image, you dismantle it all with one natural gesture, one authentic glance, one peaceful presence. You remind them that real power is invisible, and true wealth cannot be stored in banks. It lives in the spirit. So ask yourself this: chosen one, if your simplicity has the power to terrify billionaires, to shake governments, to dismantle empires of illusion, what will happen when you fully embrace it? What will happen when you stop doubting the very force that makes the powerful tremble? Because the truth is, they are not afraid of what you have done yet. They are afraid of what you are about to become. Desperation has a way of stripping the mighty of their illusions, and for him there was only one path left. If he could not buy authenticity, if he could not steal it through rituals, if he could not manipulate the universe into handing it to him, then he would try to study it up close. That is why, under the cover of secrecy, he sent men to track your every move. He hid behind cameras, satellites, and private detectives who mapped your daily routine as if decoding a mystery. And finally, like a predator stalking prey, he followed you himself, expecting to find a formula, a crack in the facade that would reveal how you carried what he lacked. But what he witnessed was not what he anticipated. He saw you interact with strangers in ways he had never seen before. There was no calculation in your kindness, no audience for your generosity, no reward for your respect. You spoke to the poor with the same tone you spoke to the rich. You listened to the forgotten with the same attentiveness you gave to the celebrated. You smiled at children you didn't know, greeted workers others ignored, and offered warmth without expecting applause. And that simplicity, that effortless grace, was the dagger that cut him deeper than all his previous failures combined. Because in that moment, the truth hit him like thunder. Even if he somehow managed to rip authenticity out of your soul and implant it into his own, it would still mean nothing. He could not use it. He could not sustain it. Because authenticity without goodness is impossible. Realness without compassion is counterfeit. And that was the truth he had avoided his entire life. His emptiness was not just an absence of authenticity, it was the absence of goodness itself. That night, sitting alone in the ruins of his empire, surrounded by silence heavier than all the applause he once commanded, The weight of his existence finally crushed him. He replayed every mask he had worn, every performance he had delivered, every soul he had manipulated, and realized none of it had ever made him real. For decades he had pretended to be a king, but in reality he had been a shadow, a ghost in designer suits, a performance with no actor behind the script. And as he watched you live without effort what he could never achieve with billions, the most devastating admission rose inside of him like a confession he could no longer resist. I wasted my entire life pretending to be someone. While this person, without masks, without strategies, without even trying, is everything I could never be. That was the breaking point. Not the billions he lost, not the partners who betrayed him, not the rituals that failed. It was the revelation that even if the universe gave him what he envied most, it would remain useless in his hollow hands. He had spent his life constructing palaces on quicksand, chasing applause from ghosts, and hiding from the mirror that your authenticity now forced him to face. And in that instant of clarity, he finally saw the horrifying contrast. You, unaware of his obsession, continued shining naturally, while he, after decades of conquest, sat in the ashes of his empire, realizing that his legacy was nothing but dust. That was the night the performance ended. That was the night he admitted the one truth he had feared above all else, that you were real, and he was not. But the story does not end there. Chosen one, because when a man like him finally breaks, when the mask shatters and the void inside screams with nothing left to silence it, the universe does not simply leave him in despair. No, it leads him to a final confrontation with the very essence he tried to destroy. And what happened next would prove, beyond all doubt, that your authenticity is not only unshakable, it is untouchable. Chosen one, hear me now. This story was never about a broken billionaire, nor about the collapse of an empire. It was always about you. About the treasure you carry inside of you that no ritual can steal, no fortune can purchase, no power can counterfeit. You are walking proof that authenticity is the one force the elite cannot control, the one light the darkness cannot extinguish, the one truth that exposes every mask. Do you understand what that means? It means that while others chase applause, you embody eternity. While they cling to illusions, you radiate reality. While they waste lifetimes pretending, you awaken lifetimes simply by existing. Your authenticity is not small, not fragile, not ordinary. It is the sharpest sword and the strongest shield. It dismantles lies without a word. It protects you with a fire no envy can quench. It terrifies the empty because it reminds them of what they will never be. And it blesses the hungry because it shows them what they still can become. You are not here by accident. You were chosen to walk this earth as a living contradiction to the false powers of this age. And your mission is not to hide, but to rise, because when you rise, every mask around you falls. So stand taller, speak truer, live freer. Your simplicity is a revolution. Your smile is warfare. Your peace is prophecy. And your existence is